Masechet Baba Batra Daf Chaf Aleph, a new Mishnah Chanut Shebechaser. Yachol limchot biado v'lomar lo, eni yachol lishon mikol hanichnasin u'mikol hayosiin. If you have a few people that all share a courtyard, and one of them wants to open a store in his home and sell goods, and people will come in and out to buy things, the other residents can prevent him and say, I can't sleep because of all the noise of the people coming in and out from your store. If you want to open a store, go to the marketplace, go to the main street, but not in the courtyard. Aval oseh kelim, yoseh mocher betoch hashuk. However, someone who lives in the courtyard is allowed to open a shop to make utensils, and then he's not going to sell them there. He's just going to manufacture them in his home, and he'll go and sell them in the marketplace. Even though that will make noise, but that's permitted. A person is allowed to use his home for the things that he wants to do, as long as it's not creating traffic of people coming in and out. And the neighbors cannot say to him, I can't, you have to stop manufacturing in your home because I cannot sleep from the sound of the hammer or of the mill. Let's say he has a mill in his home and he uses it. He's allowed to use it, and not from children. Now we're going to see what this is talking about. What kind of children? Is it that the guy has a lot of kids and they make noise? Certainly that's allowed. That's what a home is for. Right now we assume we're talking about children that will come to buy things in the shop that he has in his home, and they're coming in and out. So based on that understanding, the Gemara opens with a question. What's the difference between the beginning where you said someone's not allowed to open a shop because the people coming and going to buy will make a lot of noise, but at the end it says that the children, the neighbors cannot complain that children are coming in and out. Aren't they coming to buy goods? And here it says it's permitted, and the neighbors cannot prevent them from doing so. Abaye explains that the sefa is talking about someone from a neighboring courtyard who wants to open a shop. So if you're in a neighboring courtyard, you want to open a shop, I can't stop you because I'm in one courtyard and you're in the neighbor courtyard. Even though we might both share an alleyway, and then more people are going to be coming in and out of the alleyway, I can't stop you from doing what you want to do in a different courtyard. Whereas the resha is when we are sharing the same courtyard, there it's going to directly affect me, and there I can stop you. Rava says, if so, that the sefer is talking about someone in a different courtyard, then the Mishnah should have said so. If it's in a different courtyard, then it's okay. Why say it as children? It sounds like the point is that there's a difference between customers coming to a store and children. The children is a different case altogether. Rather, he says, this is talking about children who are coming to study, not to buy and sell. In a way, they are the customers, but they're coming to buy knowledge. And therefore, this is such an important mitzvah that if someone wants to open a school in their home, in a courtyard, even though children are going to be coming and going and making noise, the neighbors cannot stop him from doing so because the study of Torah to kids is that important. And this was started from the ordinance of Yoshua ben Gamla. Yoshua ben Gamla was the Kohen Gadol just before and during the destruction of the second Bet HaMikdash. He is mentioned by Josephus as well, as Yoshua ben Gamliel, and he instituted public education for all Jews. So now we're going to elaborate on that. Damar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Beram zachur oto ha'ish latov Yoshua ben Gamla shemo shilmalehu nishtakach Torah miYisrael shebatechila mi sheyesh lo av melamedo Torah mi she'en lo av lo haya lamed Torah mai derush velimadetem otam velimadetem atem. So Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, we remember for good Yoshua ben Gamla, because if not for him, Torah would have been forgotten from Israel. If there was no public education, then most people would not be educated, and eventually knowledge of Torah would dwindle away. Because at first, before the Takana, someone who had a father who was around and had time and was knowledgeable would teach his son Torah. But someone who didn't have a father, then the father would not teach that child Torah. Now, how do we know that it's up to the father to teach a child Torah? It says, teach them. And we read, Otam, teach them, which which otam literally means your sons. But the Midrash revocalizes it. Instead of otam, teach your sons, you teach. The fathers, you have a responsibility to teach. This is a very important law. Really, the halacha of Talmud Torah, of teaching one's kids, is upon the father himself, who has to go and teach his kids. The fact that nowadays we send our kids to school and pay tuition, okay, so that's instead of, because that way the father can go to work and you have professional teachers, but really the original base law is that it's the father himself. If the school is not doing a good job and the kid's not learning, then the father has to pull him out and homeschool him. And so in order to solve this problem that only some people didn't have fathers who were around or were available or had time or had knowledge to teach the kids, and so the rabbis made a takana that they should have teachers of children in Jerusalem. There's going to be a yeshiva in Jerusalem available for everybody. How do you know that what pasuk did they base themselves on? Even though it's a rabbinic takana, but they based themselves on a pasuk. My derush kimis Torah should come forth from Yerushalayim, from Sion. And therefore, this is the main school. Everybody should come to Yerushalayim. But still, someone who had a father, the father would come and bring him up to Jerusalem, and then he would be learn in Jerusalem. But if someone didn't have a father, either as an orphan or maybe just didn't have a father, the father didn't have the means, or didn't know about or don't understand the importance to bring his kid up to Jerusalem to study, then he would not come up and would not study. And still, there were a lot of people that were ignorant. They can't just have one school in the whole world. So they made another takana that every province, a big area that includes many, many cities, would have one school, so that it wouldn't be so far away. And at that time, they enrolled kids when they were 16 or 17 years old. Now, that's pretty old to start school. But these the yeshivot would be far away. There's only one in every province, or province might be a few towns away. It could be many miles. And therefore, a little kid wouldn't be able to go and travel all the time, but a teenager, they could go and travel. So the school was meant for 16 and 17 years old. Misha Yarabo Koes Alab Meba'et Bo V'yasa Ad Sheba Yoshua ben Gamla V'tiken Shemoshi bin Melamedet Tinokot B'chol Medina U'Medina B'chol Ir Va'ir U'machnisin Otan Keben Shesh Keben Sheba. The problem with 16 or 17 is that they were too old already, and anytime the teacher would get angry at the students and yell at them, says, "Why don't you do your homework? Why aren't you reading correctly?" Then the students would just would rebel and leave, because they're 17 and they don't want to be yelled at from a teacher, so they got up and go. Go ask anybody who teaches high school seniors, right? What it's like to try to teach kids that are 17. So already the classroom was unmanageable by that age. So that system didn't work so well. And this is when Yoshua ben Gamla came, and he used his authority as Kohen Gadol and as a respected person, and he made an institution that there should be teachers of children in every single province and in every single town. Every city has to have a school, and they should start coming to school when they're around 6 or 7 years old. That's the right time that they can start learning, and they'll be able to sit and be respectful, and then education will be successful for everyone. Amar le Rav Shemuel bar Shilat ad shitla tekabil mekan ve'ilach kabil ve'asfi le ketorah. Great line. Rav told Rav Shemuel bar Shilat, who was a teacher of children, he says, listen, until 6 years old, don't accept the kid. Then it's just babysitting. As pre-nursery, the kids are going to play. They're not ready to learn. They should stay at home and play until that age. Once they're 6 years old, then their mind is developed enough that they can start learning. And then, once they come to school, stuff the kid like an ox. Analogy of an ox that you want to stuff full with fat to make him nice and big so that he's tasty. Same thing with a kid. You stuff him with knowledge as much as you can get in his brain while he's young and he can absorb it all. That's the best time for people to learn. And the Rav gave another piece of advice, very good advice to Rav Shmuel Bar Shilat, the school teacher. He says, when you hit the kids, back then they hit the kids until very recently, kids got hit in all schools. He says, listen, fine, hit the kids, but only use the strap of a sandal, meaning a very small strap of leather, not a big a whip that's going to hurt the child, just a small one that will sting for a moment, but it's not going to cause injury. That's enough just to point out to the kid that, oh, you're not acting correctly, or you made a mistake. But the point is not to injure the child, so be light on punishment. And a child who reads, then let them read. And one who doesn't read, let them be a companion to his friends. In other words, in every class, there's always a few kids that are engaged, that are doing it. Good, they're reading. So that encourage them to read. And what about the kids that are being passive, they're being quiet, and they're not reading? Maybe they don't know how, they're not interested. So don't kick them out of class. Don't send them home. Don't beat them. Rather, let them be a companion to the friends. They'll be an audience and encourage the friends. It's okay, good job. And maybe just by sitting there and learning, they'll also learn something. So it's okay to have filler kids to be around and be and help out their friends, even though only some people in the class will be the ones that are totally engaged in reading and learning Torah. אחד מבני חסר שביקש לעשות רופא אומן וגרדי ומלמד תינוקות. בני חסר מעכבין עליו. Now we have a challenge to the law that we just learned, that someone is allowed to open a school in a courtyard even though it makes noise, and the neighbors are not allowed to prevent him from doing so. And this challenge comes from a braita that says, if one of the people that lives in a courtyard wants to become a doctor or a bloodletter or a weaver or a teacher of children, the other people in the courtyard can stop him. Because if you're going to be a doctor or a bloodletter or a weaver, people are going to be coming in to see the doctor, and they're going to make a lot of noise coming in and coming out, and it's annoying for the other neighbors, so the neighbors can stop him. And also, if you want to be a school teacher, the neighbors can stop you. So how do we reconcile this with what we saw before? And the answer is, this baraita is talking about teaching non-Jewish children. You're teaching general studies, math, science, history, whatever. That's very nice to be teaching general studies. Nothing wrong with it. But go do it in the marketplace. Do it in a public area. You don't disturb people's privacy for that. Only for Torah, then we say, listen, teaching Torah to kids is so important. We're going to override your right to have quiet in your courtyard. But for general teaching, go do it in the public area. Tashema, shenayim sheyoshvim v'chaser ubikesh echad mehem la'asot rofe ve'oman begardim ulamed tinokot chavero ma'akev alav hachanameh betinokot degoyim. Same question and answer from a slightly different baraita that says that if there's two people that are sharing a courtyard and one of them decides, I want to open a doctor's office here, I want to become a bloodletter, I want to be a weaver, people will be coming in and out, or I want to be teaching children, so the other person who lives in the courtyard could say, I don't want you to do that. You're going to have long lines out the door of people coming to, patients coming to see you. I don't want that in my courtyard. And he has a right to stop him. But it says here, what about teachers of children? Doesn't that contradict the law before? And it says, no. Here also we're talking about a teacher of non-Jewish kids, not teaching Torah subjects. And before we were talking about Torah subjects, that's where the Mishnah says that one is allowed to open a school in a courtyard and the neighbors cannot complain. Tashema, mi sheyesh lo bayit b'chaser hashutafin, הרי זה לא יזכירנו לא לרופא ולא לאומן ולא לגרדי ולא לסופר יהודי ולא לסופר ארמאי. Another challenge from this baraita that says, if someone has a house in a courtyard that is jointly owned, the owner of one of the houses is not allowed to rent out his home to a doctor, to a bloodletter, to a weaver, to a teacher, to a Jewish teacher, or to a non-Jewish teacher. So we see here that it specifies Jewish teacher and non-Jewish teacher, so we can't answer as we did before. This baraita is a little different. It's not that the person who lives there himself wants to become a doctor or a school teacher, but he wants to rent out his house. So he's saying, it's my house, I can rent it out to whoever I want, right? And the answer is no. The other neighbor can say, I don't want all this traffic. So here it says clearly a teacher, non-Jewish, but also is a Jewish teacher. So is he not teaching Torah? No, the word sofer here doesn't mean a teacher, but rather a scribe. And he's the town scribe. And so it means a Jewish scribe or a non-Jewish scribe. Both of them might be writing legal documents, business documents, secular documents. Okay, it's a very nice job, but go do it in the marketplace. I don't want people coming in and out to go do this. But if he's writing a Sefer Torah, that would be a different story. That would be for a mitzvah. And also if he's a teacher of Torah, then that would be permitted. And so we reconcile this baraita as well. Amar Rava, mitakanat Yoshua ben Gamla va'elach, la mamtinan yinuka mimata lemata, ava mibeken ishta lebeken ishta mamtenan. Rava says, ever since the ordinance of Yoshua ben Gamla to have school in every city, so we do not bring kids from one city to another. In other words, since every city is going to have a school, we can't say, oh, you know what, there's a school in the next town over, so we'll institute busing and just bring everybody to that town. No, you have to go and make a school in every town and make sure it's good so that the residents of that town can send their kids locally and not have to travel. Travel could be dangerous, takes a lot of time, and so you have to make sure that every town has a school. However, from one synagogue to another, we do bring them. You don't have to open a school in every single synagogue. Schools were often held classes in a synagogue. So not every synagogue has to have a school. You have a few synagogues in the town. So you can say, listen, this synagogue, that's going to be the school, and everybody else, even if you live a little bit far on the other side of town, you have to bring your kid to the synagogue on the other side of town. And we're not going to tax the people to have to open so many schools in every synagogue. However, if there's a river that goes through the city, and this was a synagogue on one side and a synagogue on the other side, then we do not tell the parents to bring their kids across the river because it's dangerous to cross the river with kids. So rather, you have to open another school, one on each side of the river. Now, if there's a bridge over the river, then that's fine. Then you can force them because it's safe to go over the bridge. But if the bridge is just a log bridge, the one that looks like this is pretty precarious. You can't expect kids to have to cross this every day to go to a school on the other side. So even if there's a log bridge, that's not called connected, and you have to make a school on both sides of the river. ואמר רבא, סך מקרה דקה 25 ינוקה, ואיכא 50 מוטבינן תראה, ואיכא 40 מוקמינן רש דוכנה ומסייעין לממתה. More very practical and very relevant advice even until today. He says the maximum number of kids that should be in a classroom with one teacher is 25 children. And now if you have 50 children, then you have to hire another teacher. And that means that people are going to have to pay tuition to hire another teacher. Now what if you have 40? So it's too many for one class, but too few to go and hire a second teacher. In that case, you hire an assistant teacher along with the main teacher, and the people of the town have to chip in to help pay the salary of the assistant teacher. So if you have more than between 25 and 50, that's okay, as long as you have a main teacher and an assistant teacher. You don't have to hire two main teachers. Rava says, if you have one school teacher who teaches a certain amount, he gets through 20 chapters, and you have another teacher that teaches more, he's able to get through 30 chapters in the same amount of time, or he teaches more subjects than the first, he's a better teacher than the first one, still do not fire the first one. Rava is pro tenure. Give him tenure, because otherwise that first teacher will become negligent. He knows, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna get fired when the next one comes around, so you know what, I'm not gonna bother teaching. Or let's say there's two teachers that are side by side, still one is teaching less, one's teaching more. Don't fire the first one. That way the second one, if you give him both classes, then he'll be negligent because there's no one else teaching less, so he'll teach less himself. And therefore, don't fire them, keep them there, and that way they'll keep each other on their toes. Rav Dimi min Nahar Amar Kol Sheken degaris tefeh kinat sofrim tarbe chokhmah. Rav Dimi from Nahar is against tenure. He says no. If one teacher is not as good as the other, fire that teacher. You know why? Because then, and all teachers will know, if I don't keep up, then I'm going to get fired, and that will cause jealousy. And now jealousy is generally bad. But if it's for wisdom, it's for knowledge, then it's a good thing. And so let there be healthy competition among teachers, and then they'll both increase their game and be better teachers. And therefore, Rav Dimi said, you should threaten to fire the one that's slower and fire them if they're not as good. And the second teacher, who's better, will also know that if he doesn't do a good job, he'll get fired too, and they'll get someone else. Ve'amar Rava, hane tere makre dardeke had garis ve'ladayik, hadayik ve'lagaris, motbina nahu de garis ve'ladayik, sheb shabeshta memela nafka. Rava said, let's say you have two teachers that you can hire. One of them teaches a lot, covers a lot of material, but he's not so precise in his teaching. He makes a lot of mistakes. He mistakes in pronunciation, in explanation. And the other one is very, very precise in his dikduk and every dagesh, and he makes sure that the kids get every ayin and het, everything getting right. But because he is so medakdek, he doesn't get through a lot of material. So which one is better? So Rava says you should choose the one that covers more material, even if it's not so precise, because errors will be corrected eventually, right? The kids will grow up and then they'll hear the right one. They'll say, oh, I thought it was that. He'll get it. But as long as you get the base material, right? At least get through the whole Chumash, get through the whole Tanakh, so that you know it, at least in some way, and you can correct the mistakes later. Rav Dimi midhar amar motbinan dedayik velagari shabeshta kevan de'al al. Rav Dimi midhar de'ah, just like he disagreed regarding tenure, disagrees in this case also, and he says you should pick the one who is the more precise teacher, even if he doesn't cover so much material. You know why? Because once an error is taught, that's it. Once it's raised, it stays. Once a kid learns a pasuk the wrong way, it's very hard to correct that error, because when you first learn it, it gets ingrained in that way, and it may never be corrected. And then, yeah, they'll know more material, but they'll know it wrong. So better to know a little bit right than a lot wrong. תכתיב, כי ששת חודשים ישב שם יואב וכל ישראל עד הכרית כל זכר באדום. And now we're going to see where one vowel change can make a huge difference of life and death, literally. So Pasuk in Melachim says that Yoav stayed for 6 months fighting Edom because he went and killed every male called Zachar be'edom. Ki ata lekameh David. He came back and reported to King David. Says, okay, it took a long time, but I did it. We killed all the males. Amar le, maitama abadatachi. And so King David says, why'd you do that? Why'd you kill only the males? Why didn't you kill everybody? Amar le dichtib timche et Zachar Amalek. So Yoav says, because the pasuk says, you should wipe out Zachar, the males of Amalek. That's what the pasuk says. I did exactly what the pasuk says. Amar le v'hanan zecher karinan le. And King David says, no, we don't read it Zachar, we read zecher. You should wipe out the remembrance of Amalek, which would mean everyone. Amar le anan Zachar akriyun. But Yoav says, when I was a kid, when I went to school, my first grade teacher taught me Zachar, not zecher. Azal shayle l'rabeh. That teacher was still around. So Yoav went to ask him, when you taught me, what did you teach me? Amar le akritan, amar le zachar. It has nikudot here, but the manuscripts don't have nikudot. So the machloket, which one this should be? I think it makes more sense in the continuation that the teacher says, "Oh, I taught you zachar. I thought it was zachar." So you see, there was a teacher here who maybe he got through a lot of material. He got all the way to Sefer Devarim. Very good, but he was not precise in his teaching, and he taught zachar instead of zecher, and that made a huge life and death difference in when Yoav grew up to be the general of King David. Shekal safsira lemiktele. Yoav was so upset. He says, you taught me the wrong pasuk. You taught me the wrong halacha. And then the king got angry at me because of that. So he pulled out a sword to kill the teacher. Amarle amai. Amarle dichtib arur osem melechet Hashem remiyah. The teacher says, why you want to chop off my head? He says, because the pasuk says, accursed is one who makes the work of Hashem into a joke, or is deceitful when he does the work of Hashem. Who does the work of Hashem? Teachers. They're teaching Hashem's Torah, and if they teach it the wrong way, because they don't know, they're lazy, or they're not careful, so they should be cursed. You are cursed. The teacher says, let that man be cursed, meaning himself, right? Okay, so I'll be cursed, but don't chop off my head, right? Just let me just be cursed. And Yoav says, but the pasuk in Miriam says, cursed is someone who holds back his sword from blood. If someone's guilty, they deserve to be killed, and you are guilty. There's two versions of the story. One is Yoav did indeed chop his head off, but in the other version, he did not chop his head off, but he just let him be cursed for the rest of his life. ואמר רבא, מקרי ינוקה, שתלה, טבחה ואומנה, וסופרי מטה, כולן כמותרין ועומדין נינו. Now you might ask, how could he chop off his head? Doesn't he have to be warned? You know, if you teach it the wrong way, you're teaching it the wrong way, you have to do it on purpose, and so on. So Rava says that the following people do not need any forewarning to know that they have to do a good job. Because, right, what they do is so important and can't be reversed. So a teacher of children, if you make a mistake when you teach a kid something, then that's it, it's stuck in their head. And they're going to think that that's what the pasuk means. A tree planter. People would hire tree planters, professional planters, to plant trees. And if they do a bad job and kill the trees or plant them in a way that will not produce the maximum, so they are responsible for paying for the damage. Or a butcher. If I bring my animal to a butcher and he does a bad job, he butchers the slaughter and becomes not kosher, the butcher has to pay for it. I don't have to tell the butcher, hey, please, can you do a really good job? I'm warning you, if you don't do a good job, then you're going to have to pay for it. He's forewarned. He knows that he has to do a job like that. Umana, a bloodletter. He takes out a little bit too much blood. Okay, he is responsible. And also a town scribe. Town scribe makes a mistake when he's writing something. He writes the wrong number, the wrong names. So the sofer is responsible. And so they are as if they're already forewarned, and therefore they are responsible if they make any mistake to make amends. And here's the general rule. Anytime there is irreversible damage, that's considered forewarned. If you're just doing some other job where, oh, you didn't do it good, oh, you have to do it again, you can fix it, then that person's not forewarned, he just fixes it. But in these cases, the damage is irreversible, and that shows us that teaching kids the right way is so important, because if you teach them a mistake, then the mistake will stay. Amar Rav Huna, Hai bar mevo'ah de'oke rechaya, v'atar bar mevo'ah chabre v'kamoke gabe, tinahu de'makev ilaved, amar le ka paskat le lechayuti. More laws about fair and unfair competition. Rav Huna teaches that if you have one person who lives in an alleyway, and he has a mill that's set up there, and he charges money for people to come and use his mill to mill their grain. And then someone else, his neighbor, who also lives in the alleyway, he goes and he sets up his own mill next to the first guy. The law is that the guy who was there first can prevent the second guy from setting up the mill, because he can tell them, you are disrupting my livelihood. You're going to take a lot of my customers. That's Rav Huna's law. Let us propose that the following baraita supports Rav Huna's law against unfair competition, because this baraita teaches that if one person has a fishing trap over here, a second person is not allowed to come and put up his fishing trap right next to the first one, because that'll take away his fish. That's unfair. Rather, he has to move his fish away as far as a fish travels. V'chama amar Rabba bar Rav Huna ad parsa. How much does a fish travel? Rabba bar Rav Huna says 1 parsang. In other words, if you keep it that far away, any fish that were traveling that the first guy would have caught, he'll catch anyway. And the second guy, he's far enough away that he's catching other fish that the first guy would not have caught in that time, because they wouldn't travel to his net in that time. So you see that this supports Rav Huna, because just like Rav Huna says, a second person cannot set up a mill in the same alleyway, so too this baraita says that a second fisherman cannot set up a trap right nearby. But we say no, this is not necessarily a proof. Shane dagim tehabe siyara. Fish are different because they look around. Not so clear what that means. It seems to mean that fish all follow each other, and when one person has one trap there, one net, then they're all going to follow the food over there and go there. If a second person comes and puts his in front of the first guy, then all the fish will go to the second guy automatically, because, right, they all just look look around and they go like a whole group all to the same place. So that is unfair competition because the second guy is taking away all of the business of the first guy. The fish don't have free will to decide. That is different from human beings because just like the first guy lives there and he's setting up a mill, the second guy can also, and the customers will decide if this second guy's cheaper or his quality is better, so then they'll go to the second. That's fair competition. You want your customers to come to you, so you offer them a better price or offer them better quality milling, and so that's considered fair competition. So it could be that there's a difference between fish and people. Amar le Ravina le Rava lema Rav Huna damar ki Rabbi Yehuda ditnan. Rabbi Yehuda omer lo yechalechen v'nikelayot ve'egozin letinokot mipnei shemargilan eslo hachamim matirin. So Ravina tells Rava, let us propose that Rav Huna, who was against competition, agrees with Rabbi Yehuda in the following Mishnah, where Rabbi Yehuda says, let's say you have two stores nearby each other. The owner of one store is not permitted to give out toasted grain and nuts to the kids. It sounds like people would send their kids on errands to go buy things from the store. So one of the stores has a smart idea. He'll give out toasted grain and nuts to the kids. Kids nowadays aren't going to do anything for some toasted grain, but these were the delicacies of back then. You toast grain, it tastes sweet, and then he gets the kids in the door, and then they'll come to his store instead of the other guy's store. So the Yehuda says that's not allowed, because then he's getting the kids to come to his store, and they're not, and that's at the expense of the other storekeeper, and that's unfair. You're not allowed to give out free things to customers. Hachamim, however, say it's permitted, because they say this is fine, this is a healthy competition. So Ravina tells Rava, it seems that Rav Huna, who limits competition, would agree with Rabbi Yehuda, who also likes to limit competition. And we answer, not necessarily. Afilu tema Rabbanan, ad kana piligi Rabbanan aled Rabbi Yehuda hatam, ela damar le'ana kam falgina amguze, at pelog shiuske. Avalacha afilu Rabbanan modu, damar le ka paskat le lechayuti. We don't necessarily have to pigeonhole Rav Huna to be only like the minority opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. We can reconcile Rav Huna even with Rabbanan, and we can explain as follows. Rabbanan disagree with Rabbi Yehuda, and they allow for competition in giving out free merch. In that case, you know why? Because one storekeeper can say to the other, if I distribute walnuts, you distribute almonds. In other words, I'm giving out free merch, but you can do the same thing. You want the customers back, so you give us something. I could put something on sale because you're putting something, and if you don't, it's not, that's fair, because you can also put something on sale or give out free stuff. And therefore, this is an equal playing field, and that is healthy competition. And that's why Rabbanan disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is being very strict in limiting competition to a very large extent. So Rabbanan say that's fine. However, in this case, even Rabbanan would agree with Rav Huna's opinion that if I have a mill in the alleyway already, and you come and take and set up a mill, you're definitely taking away my livelihood. There's nothing I can do. You're going to take away like half the customers. It's not like I can just give out free stuff myself, and then we'll both get customers as we did before. Is from now on, I'm definitely going to get less customers. And so even Rabbanan, so Rav Huna can reconcile his opinion even with Rabbanan. Now a challenge against Rav Huna. Metibe, Oseh Adam Hanut besad Hanuto shel Chabero, Umerchas besad Merchaso shel Chabero, Veno yachol limchot beyado, mipnei shechol lomar lo, Ata oseh betoch shelecha, Vani oseh betoch sheli. A Braita teaches that one person can make a store right next to his friend's store and sell the same stuff. And one person can make a bathhouse next to his friend's bathhouse, and the first guy who was there cannot complain and prevent the second guy. Why? Because he can say, I'm doing what I want in my property, and you do what you want in your property, right? And this is, I own the space. Okay, you have a bathhouse. Very good. Good luck. I own the space next door. So just like you can use your space, I can use my space. And so you see, according to this, competition is permitted. And this challenges Rav Huna that said that if you have a mill stone in the spot, I cannot come. Even if I live there, I can't come and put my own. So we answer Tana'ehi. In fact, there's a machloket among two Tanaim, and Rav Huna will follow one Tana, and this Braita is the opinion of a different Tana, the Tanya. Kofin b'nei mevo'ot ze et ze shelo lehoshi b'nehen lo chayat velo bursiki velo melamed tinokot velo echan mibnei ba'ale umaniyot velishcheno eno kofehu. Rabban Shimon Gamliel omer af lishcheno kofehu. This Braita teaches that if people live in different alleyways, they can prevent each other from coming into an alleyway that they don't live in and set up a shop where there's someone in that alleyway that already has the same shop. And this includes a tailor, a tanner, a teacher of children, or any type of craftsman. So in other words, if I'm a tailor in this alleyway, so I have a shop here ready for 10 years. And so you want to come in, you don't live in this alleyway, you live in an next alleyway down the street. You cannot come into my alleyway and set up a tailor shop, right? Because go away, go do it in you're taking away my business. However, if you're my neighbor, in other words, if we share the same alleyway, then I cannot prevent you from opening. Just like this is my area, so too it's your area. You live here, and you're allowed to. So you see, according to Tanakama, competition is permitted, right? This would be the same as the author of this Baraita, that you can open up next door as long as you are a neighbor and you live here. You can't come in from outside. However, Rabban Shimon Gamliel is more strict, and he says even a neighbor I can prevent. I was a tailor here first, and you cannot come and set up a shop here. I have a mill here first. You cannot put a mill here yourself. And so Rav Huna could follow the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Amar Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua pishita li bar mata chariti maseh me'akeb vishach becharga dehacha la maseh me'akeb bar mevo'a denafshe la maseh me'akeb. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, says these following three cases are clear to me. The next one is one that he's not clear about. If you have people that live in the same, someone that lives in one town and wants to set up a shop in someone else's town, so we can stop him, right? I'm a tailor in this town. You want to come into my town and open a tailor shop? I can prevent you from doing so, right? Go back to your own town. However, if we're all part of the same tax district, we all pay taxes together, then that's considered one town. We're all responsible. We all pay into the same pot. And therefore, I cannot prevent you, even though you're a different town, but same tax district, so that's considered one place. That I know is simple. Now, when it comes to alleyways, one person who lives in an alleyway and another person that lives in the same alleyway, they cannot prevent each other. I have a mill here, and you want to open your mill, and you live in the same alleyway, I cannot prevent you. That's also a simple case. But his question is, what about someone that lives in one alleyway and someone lives in the next alleyway and he wants to open a business that's the same as the business that is already there in the first alleyway? What do we call that? Is that permitted or not? And that question is left standing. Amar Rav Yosef, u'modeh Rav Huna b'makre dardeke, delama se me'akev, damar mor, Ezra tiken lahem l'Yisrael shiyu moshivin sofer besad sofer. However, Rav Huna agrees, even though Rav Huna said, if I have a mill, you can't open a mill next to mine in the same alleyway. But even he would agree that when it comes to teaching children, then you cannot stop me. If you already have a school here, I can open another school. How do we know? Because Ezra made an ordinance for Israel that they should have school teachers next to other school teachers, so that there'll be more schools. The more, the better. There's a lot of kids, and then competition is also good. So we ask, but maybe they'll be negligent because so many schools, I'm not going to bother. That guy opened a school next door, you know what, I'll close my school, forget about it. And the answer to him, no, the opposite. If you have more competition, then it will raise the standard, because competition among scholars and teachers will increase wisdom. This last section here, this from Ezra, is in parentheses in standard printed editions, in Vilna edition. And you can see here the reason why. Amar Mor, from Ezra all the way till Amar Le. These words do appear, not in parentheses, in the earlier printed editions, and they also do appear in 3 manuscripts in Munich, in Oxford, and Escorial. So there is manuscript evidence for these words, and therefore it's one can read them. Sometimes when there are parentheses, it means that a latest editor decided to take them out. But there is manuscript evidence that they belong in, and they read fine. They make sense. However, the best manuscript of the Bavot and of Batra is the Hamburg manuscript. It happens to be in Hamburg currently. However, it is actually a Sephardic manuscript from the 12th century, which is very good. Both Old and Sephardic make it the most reliable, and from the content of scholars that have analyzed it have shown that it is the most reliable. And that does not have these words, nor do these few other manuscripts. And therefore, the parentheses here actually are correct in reflecting the Hamburg manuscripts and other ones, and so therefore one can skip it or put it in. It makes sense either way. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak umodeh Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua berochlin machzirin ba'ayarot dela maseh me'akev damar mor Ezra tiken lamisel shu rochlin machzirin ba'ayarot kedei sheyehu tachshitin mesuyin lebenot Israel. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says that Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, would agree that you're allowed to have competition if you're talking about traveling salesmen who are bringing perfume, and they're going from city to city, and the locals cannot stop them from coming and selling their wares. Because the master said that Ezra made an ordinance that the perfume salesman should be allowed to go from town to town so that the women will have cosmetics available so that they can be beautiful for their husbands, and that's good for Shalom Bayit. And therefore, we allow these salesmen to come in, even though they're coming in from outside, and they are some competition to the local salesmen. That's permitted. But that's only if they are traveling. They're coming just for a couple of days and then they're going to leave. But they cannot stay and set up shop permanently in a town coming from outside and then be competition to the local stores. However, if the salesman that's coming is himself a Talmid Chacham, is a sage, is a student that's learning Torah, then even though he comes from outside, he's allowed to set up a permanent perfume shop in this area. For example, Rava permitted Rabbi Yoshaya and Rav Ovadia to set up a shop in his town, even though they came from outside. And technically, it's against the halacha because there already was that a person that had such a shop in the local town, Ravaz and Mechoza. Yet he permitted these rabbis to come in and set up competition. But why did he do that? Because they were rabbis. He didn't want them to be distracted from their studies. So therefore, he gave them preferential treatment, that they should be able to have their business and be able to have an easy business, so that they wouldn't have to spend so much time traveling from one place to the other and not be able to learn Torah. You learn from here a couple of things. Number one, that the rabbis generally did have businesses. They made money. At the same time, they were given preferential treatment to go to the head of the line, or to be able to engage in competition that other people wouldn't be able to, in preference because they are spending time learning Torah, and therefore they could spend less time doing business. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.